Welcome into another edition of Inside Carolina's Football Spring Update. Today, March 27th. Not sure when you're watching this, but if you're outside enjoying a beautiful day, I do not blame you. But we are inside. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Jason Staples. We're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. And of course, before we get too deep into the process, got to talk about a football. You see it behind me right there? The Jordan Fly Elite. Sponsors of this show, sponsors of Inside Carolina, Big Game USA. Check out the video, and we'll get rolling on North Carolina Football Spring Update.
You think you know North Carolina? It's not just the Smoky Mountains and the Old Well. This is Kenan Stadium, where the Jordan Fly Elite game ball makes its debut and its homecoming. Born to fly, built for Carolina. Snag your Carolina blue today.
You know, I must say that Born to Fly, talking about Jordan and Jordan Fly Elite football, that's pretty cool marketing there by Big Game USA. Click the link at the end of the video in the description. Get your chance to own a piece of the game day at Chapel Hill with the Jordan Fly Elite football. And the blue laces, man, they're pretty sweet. Jason Staples, we talked, I guess, last week about North Carolina spring practice, and the guys were on spring break, and the grind is back, and we've seen a lot. I think the way I want to start here, though, is on Pro Day this past Monday. Had an opportunity to go to Chapel Hill and had heard Jacoby Criswell was going to be throwing to the receivers, and we get there on Monday, and there's no Jacoby Criswell. Why? I mean, there's always a why, but that's, I guess, irrelevant for our purposes. Hate it for him, but Bryce Baker got an opportunity to throw. And I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong. So last year, Drake May threw, and he picked Jordan Shipp as one of his receivers to catch for him. Jordan Shipp had never played a snap at North Carolina, and Drake May wants him to catch passes on Pro Day, a huge day for Drake. Well, this time, guys that are applying for their livelihoods in Pro Day choose Bryce Baker to throw for them at the last minute. Jason, what's that say about Bryce? And also, you watched some video of it, or Evan Rogers took the video as we watched Baker. Just what'd you think of the whole process?
Well, as far as choosing who to throw, I mean, what it tells you is that they felt like, well, we got to get the best arm we can to be able to throw to us. So that tells you kind of what they think about, who the guy that's going to probably make them look the best as a thrower is on campus. And that's not surprising that's Bryce. I watched through, and I will say Evan did a great job shooting it in terms of being able to show the whole thing and be able to really evaluate ball location and some of those other things. And, he threw it about like you'd expect, given what we thought of him coming in. And, I've made no secret of the fact that I think he's an exceptionally talented thrower and that he brings a whole lot to the table on that side of things. I mean, the places where he's going to have more limitations right now as a true freshman are going to be in, basic recognition stuff and identifying defenses and anticipating correctly against a coverage rotation, identifying fronts and blitzes and things like that, stuff that he's never seen before. And then also things like taking snaps under center and the footwork that you need to develop and some of the basic fundamentals on that front. Those are the things that he's going to have work to do. But, for quarterbacks, the throwing ability is sort of like defense for, they say basketball, baseball, those sorts of things. And also to some degree, football, defense travels, right? You may not be able to shoot as well in that gym as in your home gym or whatever, but defense travels. Well, for quarterbacks, other things come and go a little bit in terms of what you're capable of doing. Throwing ability travels. You either can spin it or you can't, and he can spin it, and that was evident from that Pro Day showing, throwing to all those guys. He can make every NFL throw. There's no doubt about it. Now, I did think that there were a few things that he did better than others. I did think that some of the deeper stuff outside the numbers, he's still got some work to do. I'd like to see him drive the ball a little better on some stuff. I thought he was strongest on the more in-breaking routes, which a lot of quarterbacks actually have a harder time with because you have to lead your receivers a little bit differently on that. But I thought in general he was really strong on those. Your square ins, your inside the numbers type throws. He was very, very good with his locations, and outside the numbers was pretty darn good, but still has a little bit of room to work. And I'd like to see him drive it on a couple of throws that he didn't drive it as much. But that's nitpicking to the core. And the biggest thing is that I take away from this is in terms of as a thrower, he is as advertised. He is what, to quote Denny Green, he is what we thought he was in terms of his ability to throw the rock and spin it in those and make every NFL throw. And I think that bodes well for his potential moving forward.
Yeah, if you haven't watched that video, it's posted on Inside Collins' YouTube channel. It's currently pinned on the Tar Pit Premium message
about
board.
12 minutes of just solid throwing.
Yeah.
So I mean, it gives you some indication of what you're dealing with. Now again, in shorts, no
Against
rush,
air.
none of that, against air, all that. But again, at a certain point, you still have to locate the football. I've watched guys in pro days who the ball hits the ground because they don't put it where they're supposed to put it. And how many balls hit the ground there?
I didn't see many, and I haven't watched the video because I was watching it in person. I remember one out throw that was not a good throw.
Yep.
And then maybe a couple that weren't perfect but catchable. And I thought it was pretty cool that he was able to play well and do that well, given the late notice, given that he hadn't, obviously he's thrown with these guys, but he had the opportunity. And I thought, we've talked a lot about the passes out of the backfield, Jason, where you got to hit the running back where he needs to be hit so he doesn't have to worry about catching it and getting his balance back and all that. And I thought he looked good doing that. Of course, when you're throwing to Hampton, as long as he can catch it and get going forward, he's gonna hurt somebody. And that was another thing. Watching him run through those drills, Omari and Hampton, I was thinking to myself, would you want to be meeting him in the hole when he's coming through? But I digress. I guess that is an
being
NFL.
paid for it.
Yeah, that'll be somebody that makes a lot more money than us on their job this time next season or later this fall. When you're looking at Baker's development, we talked about the under center thing and the difference in that. We went into that in depth, or you did last week. What are ways that he can sort of accelerate his readiness or getting ready? Because I agree with you. They've got Ryan Brown. It would not surprise me, and I'm not breaking news or saying it's going to happen, but it would not surprise me if they got another body in that room. But Baker, to me, has always seemed like that guy. How can they speed that process for a young man that's, should be preparing for his prom, high school prom, or will be preparing for a high school prom? And then, you got TCU on August 30th or whatever date that is, Labor Day weekend.
You say people should be preparing for high school prom as though prom is something people should actually do. Come on now.
Oh, come on, man. You are so damn fuddy-duddy. But anyway.
Yeah, I didn't go to any of my proms or any of that. I thought it was a waste of time and money. So, I'm with Bryce Baker here. Get to business. But
there's plenty of time for business, man. You've got your entire life to work. That's what I tell these people. Anyway,
better get started, because the faster you get started. How old are you, Tommy? How old are you?
We're not going to say. I'm not the speed limit yet. But
yeah, you're not the
retired.
Speed limit, but you are retired, and you know why that is? Because you got started working earlier, and you decided to put your nose down and do your job and do all that. That's all I'm encouraging here. See,
that is you do have a point. You do have a point. Bryce Baker, and preparing him for the future quicker than normal, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's so many. It's interesting because I think it's easier now than ever to get young players ready at that position than, like I said, than it ever has been. One reason is because these guys, throw the football so much in high school. So, you go back to when I was in high school and teams were still, shoot, my high school, we threw it like 14, 15 times a game, maybe 20 times in a game where we got behind. I think there are a few games where we threw it 30 and it was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And most of those are the tight end, right? Tight end and running backs. So for one, you're looking at a guy who he threw it for a bazillion yards in high school and dropped back to pass all the time and saw the other thing is in high school, you're seeing more coverage variations and things than you used to. Teams used to play cover 3 or cover 2. Periodically, you'd see some sort of cover 1, which is really just cover 3 with a little bit tighter on the outsides. Now teams do a little bit more than that. You're going to see some other stuff in terms of variation as well. So that's a factor. And some of that also is because of the 7-on-7 stuff, because, whether you're with a competition team during the summer or, high school teams have these 7-on-7 things that everybody's doing all summer. You're throwing the ball and you're getting into rhythm and having to locate and get the feel for the passing game all year in high school in a way that you didn't even 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So that, it's sort of like being a shooter in basketball. At a certain point, you have to have the reps of just shooting in the gym. You have to put in your, 1,000 makes a day to be at a minimum to become a competent shooter. Well, this is what those guys come in now already having done. So that's helpful, first of all. But the second thing is college offenses, I think, are a little simpler in certain respects for young guys than they used to be. That may not apply as much because Belichick and company are going to have some wrinkles in there and all that. But I think it's in terms of how offenses are taught and the concepts that you run and all of that, I think there will be some advantages in that respect. But there's also technological tools these days. You saw the discussion of Jaden Daniels. Ooh, you got the video up here. Nice. You saw what Jaden Daniels said about this during this his rookie season. When he was at LSU, his senior year, LSU got this virtual reality system where quarterback puts on the virtual reality headset and everything, and you go into a room and you're not just watching film. This is an AI powered virtual reality system where he's actually taking the snap. Excuse me. He's actually taking the snap, dropping back, and when he turns his head and looks and sees, he sees the movement. He sees the players as they would be on the field. Based on what the film shows, the AI basically takes that and puts it into a virtual reality system. And he's able to go through this and see it as it happens while he's actually sort of quasi going through the motions. And so he can see his reads. He can see, okay, when that guy moved that way, that's where the throw was. And he can do this. And you can take 100 reps watching film in the film room, in the virtual reality room, that you would never be able to take that many reps in practice running the same concept. You can take 100 reps in 20 minutes. Mentally speaking, you're just getting trained over and over and over again on what your eyes see. And it's in a way that actually maps onto exactly what you're seeing on the field. And this is actually something that there's a difference between being able to see it in film and being able to see it in the pocket. Right? Those are two separate things. And a lot of guys have hard time going from the film room and from the whiteboard to the pocket because, okay, you can identify too high, okay, that guy walks down and he's coming here. So that should be where my player on this concept opens up. But it's one thing to kind of to know that. It's another thing to actually be able to recognize it and intuit it in real time and get the ball out, despite the fact that you may not actually see your guy fully, given the obstruction of the offensive line and other things. You have to be able to process all that in real time intuitively. And I remember when Tom Brady at one point was asked about what he was thinking, making a specific decision in the pocket. His answer was along the lines of, honestly, I don't know. I just, that's just not the way it works. I, you know, I knew that guy was going to be open, so I threw it to him. And in the one sense, some people thought that was kind of a glib answer, but what Brady was actually getting at was something I think a lot deeper than that. And that is, look, I'm not going through the 1, 2, 3 steps in the pocket and thinking through each one. Like, okay, if he's not open, now I need to go to him. And then if he's not open, and, thinking through this, I've done this so many times now that computed naturally and intuitively, so that I wasn't actually even thinking about it or processing. I just knew. And you want to know why Tom Brady's one of the greats?
That
many people think he might be the greatest of all time, and I think he's got a defensible case. That right there, it's a pretty big start. Well, these virtual reality systems that are available now, you can go in and take literally hundreds of mental reps every day on specific concepts. You can do it during the week, during the season, of what you're expecting to see defensively and all of this, so that by the time you see it on the field, you've actually mentally repped it 1,000 times. Now, I'm sure, look, Belichick and company they are fully aware of this stuff. And I'm sure that this is going to be something that, knowing that they need to get a guy like Bryce Baker ready faster, I would bet my house that they are going to have him doing something along these lines. And again, that makes it easier for guys to develop faster. You saw Jaden Daniels at LSU. He took a quantum leap forward once he started using that system, and then won the Heisman Trophy. And then he was very clear in his rookie year that one of the reasons that he was able to have the year that he did and learn as quickly as he did is he was like, look, I'm using the heck out of this system, and the stuff that ordinarily would be surprising me, I've already seen, and I've already seen from the pocket. So, like I said, Belichick and company, they know about this stuff. They're on top of the technological realities of this. And I would put a lot of, I don't know what the odds would be, but you would have to put very, 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 very steep odds on the table for me to even consider thinking that they wouldn't be doing this with some of their young guys to get them prepared. And again, this is stuff that's only really been available as a technology for about 2 years. Daniels pioneered it. It was developed by some guys who went to LSU, and when they pioneered it, they went to LSU first and were like, "Hey guys, we got this pretty cool thing. You want to try it?" And I know, through my contacts at Florida State in the new football only facility that they're putting in, they have a virtual reality room dedicated to this. They're putting stuff in for this specific stuff for their players to be able to do this and develop on this during the off season, during the season, and so on. Programs all over adopting this. North Carolina is going to be one of these as well. And again, when you're trying to prep young guys, and the real question is how quickly can this guy transition to the speed that needs to happen? That's a tool that I think makes things easier than ever. Other thing that, by the way, you can do on that is you can actually turn up the speed. So you can make it go faster than the real game would. So now I'm on 1.1 or 1.2 speed. And now I have to decide just slightly faster than I would. And then things are actually slower when you get to the game. I mean, it's wild how this all works.
Yeah, kind of like if you're watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, you turn it up to 1.5 speed. I sound smarter, faster. I even listen to myself that way.
Which is impressive.
Yeah, it's like I listen to it regularly. I'm like, God, does he know what he's talking about? I'll speed it up. I'm like, he does. He really does. But to your point, these type systems are a little bit different than, I've got a Oculus Quest over here that you can put your headset on and you can play NFL football. It's hilarious. It is hilarious to see somebody doing it. But it's the similar type thing, right? It's like you look and you take the snap and all that. It's fascinating what they can do. We're talking with Jason Staples here, sort of a Carolina spring football update sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt Congruity and, of course, Big Game USA, the Jordan Fly Elite Football behind me. Jason, moving on down the line here, the defense appears to be by all rumors and tidbits and bits of information that we've gotten appears to be a little ahead of the offense. That a couple things. One, when you're going against each other, you always have to take it like, are we really good or are they just bad on the other side of the ball or vice versa? But I don't think I'm really surprised that a Bill Belichick coach team, the defense is ahead of the offense at this point from all the things we've heard. Are you, and what would you expect to see at this point early in the process?
I would be lying if I said that I didn't think that the offense had better personnel in certain key areas than the defense. So I do think that's an interesting component to think about. Now, generally speaking, at this time in any spring, the defense is almost always ahead of the offense. It's rare that it's not because, well, there's several factors that are in play. One is when let's say you're installing two new systems, which they're more or less doing, although the system that they're installing offensively is not 100%, wildly different in terms of some terminology because you've got Kitchens who can bridge some of those gaps and translate. But when you have two separate things, cover 4 is cover 4. You change the language, but it's cover 4. Cover 7 is cover 7. You at a certain point, there are certain fundamentals that defensively you just do. And, you one gap in the and as a 3 technique in the B gap, this is the technique that you're supposed to use. And you do it over and over and over again. Offensively, things can be more varied than that. You have more things that you're having to work on in terms of developing the language and getting things to work together in those ways. So that's one of the reasons that defense tends to be ahead at this stage. And when you're installing and when you're doing all that stuff, the physicality of the defense can kind of help. It can just screw stuff up. The other thing is, frankly, when you're playing against your own teammates, defenses cheat. We used to periodically in practice, we knew that the defense knew our signals by like third or fourth day. Like, okay, they got this signal. They know what we're doing. They hear this check at the line of scrimmage. And all of a sudden, we would do stuff and it'd be like, quarterback would get to the line of scrimmage, make a check. And then all of a sudden you'd hear the linebacker shouting, toss, 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 over here, move. And everybody's running to the football and there's a 3-yard loss. And we're going, okay, come on. Like you heard us yell 29, 29, and you know exactly what that is after 4 days of facing it. And, you're just making yourself look good. So eventually what we started doing is periodically we'd, throw them a false positive or something and get a big play out of it just to like, we got you, that sort of thing. But defenses cheat a lot in that they know what the offense is doing. They know what you're supposed to be doing. And so you're going to get defenses ahead most of the time. But like I said, I think the offense, in terms of some of the bodies on the field, I think the offense might be more talented on the whole, especially in the trenches. So the fact that the defense is still ahead is actually, I think, a good sign. And it's a sign also that, honestly, it's a sign also that they're really trying to play physical football, because that's where the defense is normally going to have more advantages in these contexts. So that would be my initial response, is just, yeah, you kind of expect that. Okay, that's probably good news in that the defense is managing to compensate for having a few holes in terms of personnel here and there. And it means that probably some of the transfers that they brought in defensively are fitting in well. I think we can kind of read between the lines on that. But I would suspect that also probably means that there's a lot of, and I mean, in fairness, we know that this is the case for some stuff, but that also probably has a factor that they're cross training a lot too. And when you got new coaches and when you've got a new coaching staff and a new context, the other thing is that there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching. The coaches aren't quite as worried about making sure that everything is executed perfectly right now because they're trying to figure out what guys fit where best. And offensively, cross training tends to have more costs involved because if one guy screws something up on offense, the play is usually dead, especially up front. And you start moving guys around a little bit, and that's going to happen more often because a guy's just going to miss an assignment slightly. Defensively, there's oftentimes a little chance to kind of compensate for the guy next to you screwing up a little bit. So it's a little bit easier on that front. But yeah, I mean, and that kind of takes us into the next thing we're probably going to talk about there.
Well, they're trying, to your point, they're trying to figure out how to put pieces of a puzzle together where it looks like the best picture you can get. I mean, I'm old. I love puzzles. If you put the puzzle pieces together wrong, it doesn't look right. But if you put them together right, even though it may not seem that's the best way to do it, ultimately it turns out to be the best picture. Just your thoughts on that. And it happens all over the field. I mean, we can talk about it in terms of defensive linemen. Do you slide somebody in? Maybe they're better in than out. Maybe they're better in than the player that's an in person. And maybe if you know what I mean. So you have I don't even know what you call it, but your percentages of being better are better if this guy's in here. But yeah, just speak to that a little bit more. It's not this guy goes there, this guy goes there. Spring practice with a new system, a new coaching staff. We got to figure out the best way to put the best product on the field, even if it means moving folks around.
Yeah, I mean, I think the tricky part is first of all, it's not about one individual. It's up to another. And what we're getting at is, okay, this guy might be my best defensive end, but my third best defensive end, who's the backup to this guy, is actually a lot better than like the gap between my best defensive end and my number 3 defensive end is a lot smaller than, say, the gap between my best defensive end slid inside and my best 3 technique if he's not there. And so my best defensive end might actually also be my best 3 technique, and he might not be as good a 3 technique as he is a defensive end, but we're better with him at the 3 technique than we would be when he's at the end. So then what you start doing is you start moving him inside. You might play him. Then you're trying to figure out, okay, what down and distances do I want to put him inside where he's not maximized, but we're better because he's there? And what down and distances are we actually maximizing and optimizing by putting him in his best spot, right? That's one of the things you do. Same thing with wide receivers. Is this guy better as an inside receiver, as an outside receiver? Is he better on the line or off the line? Versus this other guy who we also could put on the inside, and then we could put this guy on the outside. He might be my best slot, but he's also my second best outside guy, and my second best slot is better than my third best outside guy. So here's how we're going to work it. So you move those guys around. Every team in the country, at least that I know of, in the spring tends to cross-train offensive line a bunch. And right now, I mean, you look at the list of guys that they brought in the transfer portal. And one thing I was clear about in my scouting reports is that there were a number of these guys that, I wasn't sure, okay, which position is he going to fit best in given what else you have on the roster, right? That's the real question. Where do these guys actually fit? So you look at a guy like Daniel King or a guy like William Boone. Both of those guys have played right tackle and had success at right tackle. Both of those guys have the athletic profile to play either right guard, which King has also played, or right tackle. Boone might actually have the profile to be able to play some left tackle athletically. The question is he too right-handed? Is he a guy that has to be on the right side. Some guys can move, some guys can't on that. You look at a guy like Lindbergh. He played left tackle and left guard. Where do you put him? Can he play on the right side if you need him? What you have to do, and what teams do all the time, is they mix and match offensive linemen, and they'll say, okay, well, this guy can play 3 or 4 positions, and I'm going to see what he looks like here. I'm going to see what he looks like here. I'm going to see what that guy looks like here. And you craft a plan to kind of look through your permutations and say, okay, here's my best 5. Not where that guy necessarily is best, but here's my 5 best guys as a mix together, putting them in those spots. And it takes some shuffling to kind of figure out where those pieces would be. Now, if I had to guess right now, I would guess that your best situation is with Blasky at center, with Banfield at left guard, probably. Maybe Lindbergh also rotating in at left guard, some movement there, some rotation there, and then probably King at right guard and Miles McVay King at right guard, and then William Boone at right tackle, with Trevion Green also rotating in at one or both of those spots, probably at the right guard spot. And then the real question for me is left tackle. And we talked about this. We talked about this last video. We talked about this in the scouting reports. Miles McVay physically has a lot of the tools that you would want at the left tackle spot, but the real question we had was, how much does he love it? Is he going to be able to take the step? Is he going to be coachable? Is he going to be a guy that actually can play that position as a whole, rather than just being a guy that has the body to play that position? And I think from our initial reports so far, the answer to that is negative. That he's probably not the answer at left tackle, which means that, to me, I look at this roster and I go, they probably need to get a left tackle in the portal, honestly. So, because I don't think Lindbergh is a left tackle, as a true left tackle in the ACC. So I think you have to figure that out. And then you've got a guy like Blasky who has played multiple positions, but I think you're probably best at center there. So, but again, you're starting to, if you don't feel comfortable about your left tackle, then maybe you start to shuffle a bunch of guys and just try to figure out, like, do we have a body that, if we can't find a competent left tackle, do we have somebody? Janai Norwood, is there somebody that we can put at left tackle where we feel like that's not a major problem? And you shuffle guys around until you figure out where you can be the least weak. So to me, that's a place where you're going to see a lot of shuffling this spring. Again, we haven't been in practice, but I would be shocked if there was not a bunch of shuffling going on the offensive line and on the defensive line and in the secondary. I think there's going to have to be a decent amount of shuffling to figure out which guys fit at which safety position, which guys are inside corners versus outside corners. How do you mix these guys together? And so there's going to be a bunch of that moving around at this stage. And that's why you have to maximize how many reps you get.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a work in progress, and they are working consistently, and there are no breaks. It is a grueling practice. It is a grueling situation. We're talking with Jason Staples with you like that. Hold on. I got to talk about my sponsors, though. Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Get your gear, get your swag for Carolina football season. It starts sooner than you know. It starts in late August, and Johnny T-Shirt will have everything you possibly need, and they're 10% off if you're a premium subscriber. Also email Matt at congruityhr.com for your small to mid-sized business assessment, where they will hook you up with all the plans and the purpose and the help that you need to grow your small to mid-sized business. And don't forget Big Game USA with the football. I expect to see these footballs flying around at tailgates all fall. If you want a piece of the action, that's the way to get it. Jason, talk about grueling practices, and this will be our last segment here on the March 27th update. There's been some great threads on the Inside Carolina message boards about this stuff and discussion, but Practice is not for the weak. It sounds like at Bill Belichick, and they practice outside. That is a beautiful indoor facility. Football is meant to be played outside on grass. If we've seen what's going on in Kenan Stadium on grass and outside, just your thoughts on what we understand how practices are going. Not going to really talk about how they used to go. We're not going to talk about orange slices and breaks and snacks that a lot of people want to focus on because we're looking forward. And Belichick, practice is practice, and it's a hard-ass practice. Your thoughts on that?
There has been, I will say, my heart has been strangely warmed by certain of the reports that we've gotten from some of the folks who've managed to give us some good reports of what's been going on in there. One thing that I absolutely love is there's no breaks and no water on the field. If you're thirsty, take yourself out and go to the sidelines just like you would in a game.
Tired? Raise your hand.
And
don't go to a knee and
yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll take note of who has to raise their hand and tap out. See, this is how we practiced 25 years ago when I was in Tallahassee. We didn't have water on the field like that. We had specific water breaks that would happen. And again, we're in Tallahassee. For those of you unaware of it, Tallahassee can get warm.
It's like wearing a fur coat in the sunshine outside.
Yeah. So what would happen is you would practice and you'd go hard and you'd minimize breaks. You'd do all this. And then there would be your one water break where what they would do is they would pour, the Powerades into actually little cups or whatever. And everybody would go over to the shade tree. We had a couple live oaks in specific spots around the fields. You go under that, drink your thing for a second, and then the whistle would blow and bam, you'd be gone again. And there you go. In our off-season conditioning, we also weren't allowed to have water as well. But that eventually, after one of my teammates died during our sessions, that the ensuing lawsuits and things forced that to change. So we didn't have breaks or water for those until later. But the way that I think about this is, practice is for getting better. Practice should be uncomfortable. Practice should be the hardest thing you do in terms of this. You want the games to feel easy compared to what you have to do on the daily in practice. You want to get out there and go, man, this is easy. Like, this is slow. And, the thing that I've been beating this drum for, I don't know how many years on this podcast of in practice, the single thing that you're trying to do more than anything else as a coach, if you're going to be very efficient, if you're going to maximize your time, is you want to maximize the number of reps, the number of quality reps that every player gets. And that's not just one player, that's every player. So the best programs in the country and every pro team, you divide up so that guys are not standing around. They're always actively working. So, a lot of programs, the best programs that I know of, what they do is they divide 1s and 3s and 2s and 4s, and they split off, and you're always running either 2 or 3 offenses and defenses at the same time. 1s versus 3s, 2s versus 4s is very common, and you have them on half the field, or if you have two fields, next to each other, which most of these programs do, you have one on one field, one on the other, and they're doing exactly the same stuff, and they're repping it out over and over and over again. And that's 1s and 2s, and there's the specific, backups and things that rotate in as a part of the 1s and 2s and all that. But the whole thing is organized so that there's nobody standing there with their helmet off, with their knee on the ground, watching. If you're on this team, you're up and you're practicing. And if you're not on the field right at this moment, because let's say you're the number 9 defensive tackle, which means that you're just off the field in the fours, then you're not on the field right at this moment, but you're about to rotate on, because we've got to rotate every 5 reps rule or whatever. And when you're not on the field, there are ways of making sure that you're still moving. This is the stuff that if you're doing this, and this is, as I understand it, I mean, again, one of the reports we got is, wow, they're running like 3 units at a time. Yeah. That's how it always should be. And that, I mean, you're looking at doubling, tripling, quintupling the number of reps that every player gets. Number one, that makes you much better because guys are actually getting more practice every day. The second thing is it changes the level of conditioning that your team has, because every guy is going through and getting into football shape every day, so that then when you get into the season and you're used to operating at this tempo and this pace, and you get into the fourth quarter, it's not like you haven't run that hard, that fast, that long before. This is just a Wednesday practice. And that change, then you get guys that you don't get cramps. You get guys that now it's a 13 play drive, and we just did 13 plays at this tempo on Tuesday. That changes the way that you work as a program. So that's really, really important. I also really like, I mean, this is where I'm unacceptably old school perhaps, but at least Belichick is as unacceptably old school as me on this. The no music after warm-ups thing. God, I love that. Because to me, like, why do you need the music? We're not here to dance. We're not here to have fun. The main thing I want you to be able to do is to hear me as a coach. If there's anything here that's going to interfere with you hearing my voice as I chew your butt out because you didn't take the right step or whatever, or if there's anything that would interfere with the way that you're thinking, then we're not doing this right. The focus should be entirely here. We need to lock in. And the other thing, honestly, I think this is more important. That's more important now than it was 25 years ago. Because now, how many college students, but how many of these players as college students have 10 minutes of actual quiet in their lives at any point?
It's incredible. None.
So what I mean is, how many, and go to a college campus and just walk around and look around and find me how many people, just be there for an hour, sit in a quad or whatever. Tell me how many people you see that have even 5 minutes of consecutive time where they're not listening to music, listening to a podcast, watching TikTok, pulling out their phone and looking at it, doing something that is interrupted, where they're putting themselves in a context of noise and distraction. I'm going to bet that number is actually going to be 0 that you're going to find. And how many of these guys during the course of their day are just constantly bombarding themselves with the infinite scroll, with the videos, with music. They get in their car, first thing that happens is they turn on music. So this is constant surrounding. The one thing you need to learn to do is to lock in a context of quiet and say, you know what? I'm actually going to focus on one thing. This is a problem I have with a lot of my students right now, and a lot of university professors are finding this around the country. Students are having a hard time reading any assignment longer than about 2-3 paragraphs because they're not used to actually focusing on one thing for that long without immediately shifting their attention to something else. They're used to the pace of infinite scroll, and they've got the television on, they've got YouTube in the background, and they've got music on while they're going to read. And it's like, guys, you can't do this. Like, I have this talk with my students, like, okay, how many of you are reading like this? How many of you do that? How many of you have your notifications on, and how many of you read on your device, on your either your tablet or your phone, for almost all the reading that you do? Hands go up. How many of you have your notifications on for your social media and so on, so that it shows up on screen? All hands stay up. Turn that stuff off. It means you will not be able to focus, right? So I say all this to get to where this is why it actually is useful to turn the music off. It's like detox, right? We're going to put you guys through a 2.5 hour detox every day. We're going to sit in the film room. We're going to focus. We're going to go out to that field and we're going to sweat and we're going to focus, and we ain't going to have any distraction. There's going to be no noise. There's going to be nothing that you can kind of fade into. There's nowhere to hide from the task. I think that's actually more valuable now than it ever has been, because so many of us don't have any quiet in our lives at any point ever.
Preach.
So
I will say Jason Staples practices what he preaches too, because try to text him.
yeah, I have my, in fairness, yeah, Tommy's right. I have my my notifications and everything during the week. That stuff goes off, and I have my focus zones set so that only certain stuff ever filters through. And then when it's time for me to check it in my rest periods of productivity or whatever, then I check it. And if it's not between those things, sorry, I'm working.
It's a great point. It's a great way to end this show. We're talking about spring practice and updates, and
it's all about the work.
All about the work. All about getting better. You see these guys talk about just 1% better every day. Well, turn down the noise. Turn the quiet up. Eric Church had it right when he talked about that. That's Jason Staples. I'm Tommy Ashley. It's been a spring football update today, March 27th. If you're watching this later, we recorded it on a beautiful day in Chapel Hill. Jason, it's always a pleasure, my man.
Looking forward to seeing what the results of all this embracing the work are, huh?
Therein lies the rub. It shall be an interesting take. We'll be back soon enough. Check out Inside Carolina for all your needs for everything Carolina football, basketball, and baseball related, and women's basketball. Huge game this, I guess, Friday against Duke. They are still in the NCAA tournament. And as always, we'll be following North Carolina as they grind through spring practice up to April 12th and the public practice where folks can come get their feel on the work that is being done. Shout out Johnny T-Shirt, Congruity, and Big Game USA. Shout out to everybody that's paying attention. We'll see you soon.